We are joined now by Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who is a political analyst. Prof, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. What you make of this development, is this the president giving in to pressure by GNU partner, the Democratic Alliance?
Thank you very much, Naredi, for having me, and good evening to your viewers. First of all, I must say that we have to look at this issue from different ends. On the one hand, the president acted in line with the Constitution, which is Section 84 of the Constitution, which empowers him to hire and fire ministers. Of course, we know in the previous administration, when his predecessor hired and fired ministers, then was dragged to court. I was vocal on that issue, saying that it's not right to ask the president to explain himself. And then, of course, some people were saying that it was because at the time I was seen to be closer to former President Jacob Zuma. But I've made the same point with President Ramaphosa that what he does is in accordance with the law and is in accordance with the Constitution. But I tend to differ with my sister from Busa when she says that the president took too long to act on Minister Nkabane. My view is that this case seems to be treated differently from others. In fact, the president acted with speed on this one. How many other ministers have been implicated in wrongdoing, and what action was taken? Those are the questions we should be asking.
And that's the question I am going to ask you, because we've seen quite a bit of movement in how the president, is shaping the cabinet over the past few months. We've got Andrew Whitfield of the Democratic Alliance removed as deputy minister from the Trade and Industry Department. Nkabane today fired as Minister of Higher Education, but last week Sunday, amid big allegations of political interference in the SAPS and involvement of criminal syndicates in the SAPS, Senzo Mchunu being put on special leave. I mean, let's make the sort of comparisons on the thinking of the president in your view in each and every one of these scenarios.
Yeah, there is something very concerning here, Naledi. Ideally, you would expect the president to act evenly. In other words, if I'm the minister, you are the minister, and then somebody else is the minister, and you are found to be in the wrong, then the understanding is that the president should act in the same manner, and then either he decides to suspend us or he fires us. But you cannot fire others and then suspend others and then say that we are doing things the right way. I think that is where the problem is. If, for example, I were to ask, what is the main crime that Minister Nkabane has committed? Is it because she didn't appear in Parliament? If that is the case, how many other ministers have failed to appear in Parliament? And what were the consequences? If then the accusation is that she didn't follow the right procedures in terms of appointing the sitter board, then of course we will ask the same question, how many other ministers before her have done the same, and then they went scot-free? So for me, what would have assisted in this matter would be to look at all the other implicated ministers holistically, and then let the president and then exercise his right. The right, I say, is enshrined in Section 84 of the Constitution, and then apply that evenly. If you apply it selectively, then of course that causes a dent in your political image.
Let's just look at the political chess that's on the table here now, and possibly in front of the president. You also then have, with the removal of Nkabane, the entry of Dr. Nomusa Dube-Ncube as Deputy Minister of Higher Education. This is the former Premier of KwaZulu-Natal. Is this possibly the president trying to solidify with the constituency in KZN, for instance? What do you think the political thinking there might be?
I don't
Prof, are you there?
know what the president is thinking. Given that he spends a lot of time with him. I personally don't have an idea as to how he came to the decision that Dr. Nomusa Dube-Ncube should be the deputy. I don't know what the thinking was. But on the point we are making that possibly he might be trying to consolidate power in KZN, I don't think that will be the reason. If he thought that was the reason, it is not going to work. Because Nomusa Dube-Ncube doesn't necessarily draw a lot of support in KwaZulu-Natal, and therefore appointing her as deputy minister would not necessarily draw a large following for the president. So I don't think that will be the reason. There might be other reasons, But that is definitely for me not the reason.
Yeah, I just want to go back to Ngabane for a little bit, because she was one of the more interesting sort of appointments to this administration's cabinet. When you consider that she's fairly young woman going into an incredibly important department. When she took over the Department of Higher Education, there was a sense that you've got a new blood going into the executive under this GNU, and I wonder if you think that that's a loss, or perhaps the real question is what you think the future holds for someone like Dr. Ngabane.
No, on the first point, Naledi, you are absolutely right. I'm one of the people, in fact, who applauded the president when he appointed Minister Ngabane, because we've been complaining all along that we talk about intergenerational mix, but that only remains in theory. In practice, you don't see young blood being infused in the governance structures of this country, be it at the National Assembly, or be it in the NCOP, or even in the provincial legislatures. So when the president appointed Ms. Ngabane, some of us were happy that he was then, of course, applying what the ANC has been saying all along in terms of intergenerational mix, which then raises concerns then that now that she has been found in the wrong, there is no sympathy to her, as there's been sympathy to other former ministers. The question then is it because she's young, or is it because of other reasons, or because the crime she allegedly committed is more serious than the ones that have committed a crime before her? Those are some of the critical questions. So the point, Naledi, for me is that as much as I applaud the president for implementing the law and following the legislation, but I think he's doing this selectively, and for me that is the main concern.
Yeah, and just lastly, Buti Manamela, waiting patiently in the wings there as deputy minister in that department for a long time.
Yeah, with Buti Manamela, I have no question, because as you said, he has been deputizing for quite a long time, and he has earned enough experience for him to be elevated into the position. So I don't see any problem with that. Of course, politicians will have a different view, but as for me, where I'm standing, I think that it was the right decision, because you cannot be a deputy for the rest of your life, let alone the point that you have two deputy ministers. And then I'll agree with my former colleague that indeed I don't see any reason why you need two deputy ministers, because the bulk of the work in each department is done by your DGs, your DTGs, and all other civil servants in those departments. So these are political heads in the main. So I don't understand the logic behind having two deputy ministers. But having said all of that, with Buti Manamela, he has been in that portfolio for quite some time, then elevating him makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. If I ask you to throw the bones as to what you see possibly happening next, if you consider that the Democratic Alliance, just over an hour ago, we spoke to them on this channel, and one of the things that Karabo Gagao said, spokesperson for the DA, is that this is not for them as simple as an eye for an eye, in the sense that it's not Ngabane for Whitfield, for instance, that they will still pursue that the president deals with Thembisi Melani. Do you think that is something that we'll see the president taking on?
You know, never trust politicians, my sister. They will say one thing, they walk left and then talk right. So with the DA, for example, this is the same organization that was saying that it will never work with the ANC because the ANC is corrupt and is full of thieves. Where are they now? They are part of this coalition government. And of course, sometimes they make statements out of anger, which is very dangerous. Because if you are angry, your reasoning ability goes down. That is a fact. So in this case, the DA might come up and say, we celebrate because our voice has been heard, and then the president has fired Minister Ngabane. But then, as you say, there are other ministers that have been implicated, and the DA has been making a lot of noise, and the president did not act, and there were no consequences. So I don't think that we can trust politicians and say what they say, in fact, they really mean it. They will say it today, and then tomorrow they will deny, and then they claim that they were misquoted. That is the phrase we've heard several times.
Prof. Bheki Mngomezulu, thank you so much for some of your reflections on this moment and that news coming in this evening. And of course, we'll take more of your reactions. In fact, let's take a look at some of those WhatsApps now that have come in from our viewers. Tabo says, well done, President. She must go home. She was She was not have passion to build South Africa. Oh, she does. I'm guessing that means she does not have the passion to build South Africa. Junior in Pretoria says the sacking of now former Minister Ngabane raises questions about the president's strategic leadership and decision-making ability. It puts his assertiveness into question. This shouldn't be a point of public discourse before he makes a move. As the first citizen, he needs to understand the constituencies better. Now we ask, is the sacking of Ngabane enough? What about all the others like Simelane he's been protecting? Thank you so much, Junior, for sending in that WhatsApp.